You don't have to be the brightest guy in the room. A good CEO finds talent. A good CEO finds people that can do the work better than you can in regards to delivering the outcomes, right? A good CEO then looks after them and enables them and clears the way for them to be great.
This is Down to Earth Conversations, where we hear from ordinary people who are helping to bring a bit of heaven down to earth. Kia ora, welcome to another episode of Down to Earth Conversations with me, your host, Andy Dixon. Thanks for listening in and welcome to any new listeners out there. If you enjoy this episode, make sure you check out my other conversations with other amazingly ordinary human beings who are helping to bring a bit of heaven down to earth. And if you want to support what I'm doing here at the podcast, would you consider telling one other person about it? Thanks to everyone who already does this. You guys are the only way that this thing grows, so I'm really appreciative of that. Today I have the honour of having Bruce Pilbrow on the podcast, whose wife Amanda featured just a few episodes ago. Bruce is a CEO who's worked across business and not-for-profits. He loves working in spaces that have a positive impact on the world, and he's become a bit of a transformation specialist, helping organisations change and adapt to better fulfil their mission. We talk about disrupting the status quo, building culture, and doing it with empathy. We hear how Bruce's role as a CEO is about discovering talent and harnessing it to allow both the people and the organisation to flourish. We hear about his current role with the Spirit of Adventure Trust, who specialise in youth development. And we talk about being an ally to the young people in our lives so that they can thrive and live their best lives. This is episode 80 of Down to Earth Conversations. Here's Bruce Pilbrow. Well, it's a privilege to be sitting with Bruce Pilbrow today. Bruce, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you, Andy. Good to be here.
And excitingly, I think, other than members of my own family, you're the first completed set of married couple that I've had on the podcast, because, of course, I had Amanda on not too long ago.
Oh, yes, you got into did you get into the mind of Amanda? Man,
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Try living with someone who's so smart and so articulate at the same time.
Yeah.
I've learned so much from her over my life, but certainly the last 5 years.
Well, here's your chance to prove you're articulate and smart as well.
Well, so I think she set the bar very, very high, and then we're just going to probably just, show what common people look like.
Awesome. So apart from being married to Amanda, no hair queer, who are you? Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, I'm Bruce, as you know. I'm 55 years old. I don't feel 55. I still feel 25, but a bit more grey now. I'm currently the CEO of the Spirit of Adventure Trust, so I get to play with a big toolship, and I guess the core of our business is youth development. I'm married to Amanda, 34 years this year, which is
Cool.
I think that's a real achievement these days.
Yeah.
So something we're very proud of, and we still deeply love each other. Got 3 growing children, a son, 29, a daughter, 26, and another daughter who's 24. And 2 of them are married, so I guess I've got more kids.
Yeah.
Can't really call them kids anymore. I'm not sure what to call them. Young adults? Not really young adults. They're my children. I still see them as that. Yeah.
I think they'll never stop being your kids, will they?
No, it's funny, isn't it? Because I think what's really cool, Andy, is that you still have to put the parent hat on. There's still times in life where my daughter will ring me and she just needs me to be her daddy. Her dad,
Yeah.
not her daddy. Her dad. You got to be careful saying that these days. But her dad. And I think from a parenting perspective, it's so nice to be in a place where our relationship with our kids is so, it's a real two-way, deep relationship where we share stuff that's going on in our lives. And whilst we've still got the father-daughter or father-son connection, there's also a deeper connection, which is a sort of a deep friendship.
Yeah.
And I feel very privileged to be in that position, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's beautiful. We're going to talk a bit about some of the roles that you've had over your career.
Yeah,
And
quite.
you've bounced around between both the business world, the not for profit world. You've been a sort of marketing director, CEO, board
Yeah,
member, and for a bunch of names that that a lot of New Zealanders would recognise. You know, Parenting Place, World Vision, Yellow, Spirit of Adventure,
yeah,
Canteen, a whole
yeah,
bunch of those kind of organisations that are kind of household names in New Zealand in a bunch of
yeah,
ways.
yeah. They are.
What is it that attracts you to an organisation?
Yeah, it's a good question because I guess at the moment, turning 55, I found myself in this sort of real space of sort of I guess reflection of kind of why am I here and what am I trying to do and maybe I should do that at 21, but I think it's normal to do it at 55 or
Yeah,
certainly in your 50s. And I guess I've been trying to answer that question for myself. For me, I'm looking for some form of impact. And now impact can be bottom line. It can be dollars, it's dollars and cents, and that's fine. But I get more attracted, I think, by things that are trying to shift a dial or trying to make a difference at a deeper level.
yeah,
And I think in a country like New Zealand, when you work in the space like that, where you're trying to shift a dial or trying to move something, you it requires a different type of person. It requires a deeper level of creativity. It requires a sense of trying to be very holistic about the way you look at things. And it doesn't tend to be as transactional as, say, I've got product A, I need to put it on the shelf and connect it to the customer and sell it. Like a toothbrush.
yeah,
I mean, we all need toothbrushes, and they're
yeah,
important.
yeah. Someone's got to do that. But
But it's quite a transactional relationship where when you're working in NGO or you're working in businesses that have a deep meaning to them, um, the transactional sort of comes out of it and becomes much more of a deeper relationship with the customer. And I enjoy that because
yeah,
you start to see a change. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, looking at some of those businesses or organisations that you've been in, you've led some big changes in those spaces. You know that
Annoyingly so, some.
you
Yeah.
you seem to you kind of be drawn to those transformation spaces, those places where you need to go in and make changes. Is that something that
Yeah.
you thrive on, or is that just something that's kind of
Yeah.
happened accidentally? Or
I think I've become way more comfortable with it. It's interesting because being the age I am, and I'm probably 10 years, oh shit,
yeah,
20 years further than
no,
you maybe,
10, yeah,
10. But, back in the day, you sort of got a job and you stuck at it for 10, 15 years. And people often say to me, you seem to move a bit. And I go, well, I'm a CEO. I think if a CEO is there beyond 5 years, you've got to be, you've got to stay fresh
yeah,
because, and I think a good leader is one that recognizes that. They recognize that you're there for a time. You're handed the baton. There's a great book called Legacy, which is about the All Blacks, and I'm not a massive sport nut, but what it talks about there is handing the jersey over in a better condition than when you got it. So when you go into an organisation, I think a CEO in particular, or even anyone in the C-suite, your job is that you take the baton and you are there for a time to transform it into something better than when you had it, and then when you leave, you pass it on, and you pass it on well, and you leave well, and you pass it on well, with the hope that they would do the same. Um, and I've certainly found myself in situations where I've stayed longer as a CEO. The parenting place I was there for 9 years, 7 as CEO, where I was getting to the stage where actually I probably wasn't going to be good for the brand long term because I would be looking for ways to break it or destroy it or
yeah,
put it into that sense of needing fixing again.
yeah,
And you're better to step away and let someone else pick up the reins. Yeah, I mean it's interesting because you look at Yellow. I mean, I was Yellow's. Well, that was an interesting project because it was transforming an old way of thinking, which is a paper based model, into a digital framework. And but I was still annoyed in the meetings. I was still going, so what's the mission? Where's the heart of this? It's not just about people finding people. It's about helping a small business thrive and realizing that they are scared of the digital world and how can we hold their hand so that they can have a beautiful experience stepping into a digital space. And I used to always talk about Jim who owned the tire shop. Jim who does tires all day, loves tires all day, but he doesn't know how to connect a customer through a digital framework. How can we help Jim become better so he has more time for his family? So I'm always looking for the
yeah, awesome.
missional. Yeah, you know what I'm
Whereas
saying? Yeah,
whereas previously Jim would have had his number in the phone book
yeah,
and would have relied on that to be found.
yeah. And now Jim needs to realise that he needs to create content and has to have a bit of a character, and he needs to have a story, and he needs to be a bit more vulnerable and share himself as
Yeah.
the community starts to connect with him and therefore use his business. So that's kind of how I think.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
does that bring you real joy when you see those changes happening?
100%. Yeah, 100%. When you see someone, my business coach would say to me that I walk into a business and I can see where we need to go very, very quickly. Because the word transform or disrupt can often have negative connotations. And the negative connotation in that space is that when you disrupt or transform, it usually can have a negative impact on people. And what my business manager said, and she only said this a couple of weeks ago, and I'm taking it on board. She said, "You have the ability, Bruce, to disrupt but build culture at the same time." And I think you can do that, but you do need to do it differently. And you're going to ask me how now, aren't you?
Oh, I mean, I was just thinking, man, that sounds difficult.
But
You know,
well, yeah, well, it is. I mean, we often talk about love. Love is not just all the fluffy stuff; it's also the tough conversations.
mm,
And when it comes to transformation or any form of disruption, you still got to put people at the centre of it. And even though it may affect their roles, you still got to do that with love. And so, what are things that are not with love? Taking too long. I've seen transformations in Christian organisations and in non-Christian organisations that take a year. That's not love. That's painful, and that destroys culture. I see transformations that have no clear vision of where we're actually heading. The job of a CEO is to step up and go, we're at point A, we need to be at point B, this is what it looks like, and this is how long it's going to take, and this is how we're going to do it. And it's very consultative. Often in businesses, it's very transactional. You turn up to work, you get given an envelope, you're asked to, it's a redundancy envelope, you're asked for your input, but the decision's already made. I mean,
yeah,
you've been there, I've been
I've
there.
been there. Yep.
But how do you take an organisation on a vision? I mean, I had a big transformation to do at Yellow, and it actually, I think it moved about 60 people out of the business. But most of the people, when I did these one-on-one, said to me, I get the vision, I understand it, and I agree with you, there's no place for me. And then you move into the place of, okay, well, how do I bless you out? How do I look after you? Do you understand? So,
Yeah.
yeah, so transformation can be done and build culture at the same time, I believe, with clear
Mm,
vision, being really decisive, and making sure that you put people at the centre of it,
yeah.
and even if it's a tough conversation,
Yeah. Sounds like there's a lot of empathy involved,
has to.
but because you're thinking about, okay, so this person, they're actually not going to be still working with us,
Yes,
but you're still thinking about them as a person and what does that mean for them?
yeah. I'm known for my walks around the block. I mean, we're in the. I guess we're talking about the harsh side here, but Brené Brown has this wonderful quote. You can either vulnerability. Well, there's two quotes I love. One is when she talks about vulnerability, it's not about wearing your heart on the sleeve and I guess crying in the corner. It's about being willing to sit in the discomfort.
Yeah.
So if I say something that's harsh or hard for you to hear, Andy, I have to sit in the discomfort with you. That's vulnerability. And if you cry in front of me or you're destroyed or distraught, I don't avoid it. I sit there with you and then try and work with you out to a solution. That's the core of vulnerability. If you have a transactional approach to cultural change or to any form of transformation, I can do that behind lawyers. That's
Yeah.
not vulnerability.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. I think that's cruel.
Yeah. You
So
can do it through a letter, an email.
yeah, and then the other part of the other one I love from Breno Brown is you can choose courage or comfort, but you can't have both. And so often when you're shifting change in a business or an organisation or NGO or a church, you know, courage means that you stick to your guns, your yes is your yes, and you move with decisiveness towards the goal. And trust me, it's not comfortable for
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, we got into it quick, didn't we?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, like, I think that's actually a really important part of what you've been involved in that we like to discuss with people because people see these people that come in and make changes and suddenly people are gone and there's this kind of perception of callousness and
Mm,
yet that's not at all the way that you're talking
no.
and you're going, well, actually, if these changes don't happen, this thing's dying anyway, or this
Yes,
thing's not going to
correct.
achieve what it wants to achieve anyway.
Yep.
How can we get it there while caring for people in the best way we can,
Yep.
and turn it into a place where people actually flourish? That's what I'm picking up from you,
Yeah.
as opposed to that perception of, oh, this organisation just killed all these jobs. What a
Yep.
horrible thing,
Yeah.
Um,
And it's okay to be uncomfortable, and it's okay to sit in the discomfort.
yeah,
And I think, I've also been in organisations where I've said, if we don't change in 8 months, we'll be closing the doors. And they chose not to believe me. And that's okay. I go, well, I've given you the information. It's uncomfortable. I'm happy to follow through on it. But if you don't want to change, that's okay as well. And I'll step back.
yeah,
So I was just thinking the other day on reflection. I don't say this to skite. I say this because I'm proud of it. Every single person that I've had to move out of a business, I've done personally one-on-one, even as a CEO. So, I mean, like I said, we get into the hard side of transformation, which
yeah,
affects people. The hard side there's other hard sides of transformation as well. I mean, the other big one is, and you would have heard this 1,000 times, Andy. So, oh, we used to do it this way, or back in 25 it was
yeah,
this, or we don't do it that way, or and that's naturally resistance to change. And anything, especially if you're talking about digital transformation, that becomes a big thing because you can become so used to doing things a certain way in a certain system. And if you're not a digital native, it's even harder. But if you look at a church structure or an elder, a not-for-profit or a business, the resistance to change and the fear around it cripples you
yeah,
to the point that you actually miss out on greatness. I find that intriguing
yeah,
because I'm quite happy to get in there and get my hands dirty and go for it. I remember with Manda, you're talking about churches moving to a fully inclusive or affirming perspective. That's a painful transition for many churches, but it takes courage to do it and discomfort. And there will be things will look very, very different at the end. Your church may be 300, now it's 100 or whatever.
yeah.
But have you got the courage to move through and do it because it's the right thing to do or it has a clear vision?
And I guess that comes back to what does success look like too,
Yeah, what does great
because
look like?
yeah, does great look like having all those people on the bums on seats,
Yeah,
or does it look like being authentic
yeah,
and feeling like actually the way that people are connecting here is because we are authentic and because we've embraced this journey.
yeah.
Um,
And it goes across all industries. It goes across whether you're in a church, whether you're at NGO, or whether you're in business. The same, I guess, ecosystem of thinking or whatever is exactly the premise is exactly the same.
there's like a nostalgia factor, where people look back and go, "Oh, that was when it was good, so we
Yeah,
need to go back to doing that."
yeah,
And it's like,
yeah,
well, actually going back to doing it that way isn't going to work now. You know
yeah,
that, but it's a trap that we so often fall into as humans, of
yeah,
going, "Oh, things have gone a bit awry. Let's go back to what worked." But there was a reason why it worked back then,
yeah,
and that's not the set of circumstances that we're in now. And yeah,
yeah.
tricky.
I mean, when the Israelites look back to Egypt, they're going, "We want to go back. We can't handle this.
Yeah,
It's too much discomfort.
yeah.
The pain's real."
We'd rather be
But they had to
slaves.
rather be slaves, and I mean that's an extreme example, but it is an example of how people often think,
Yeah,
because and I think as a leader too, and I've learned this. I was terrible at it, and I think I've got better. Is that you've still got to recognise that people need to move at their own pace.
yeah,
So yes, you can set a very clear vision, but you've also got to set expectations on them, but also yourself. So I get frustrations at work where I go, my expectation is you should be here, but you're here, and maybe I'm setting expectations that are far too high, and I need to cool my heels a little bit and make sure embrace you and bring you on the journey better. Or the person might not be able to do it, and that's another conversation. And so I've had situations, Andy, where I know that if my expectations they need to be here, and I keep pushing them to it, I can actually destroy them rather than having an adult conversation to say, well, this is where we need to be. do you really see yourself there, and what does it look like if you're not?
Yeah. I think that connects with a conversation that we had when we caught up recently, where we're talking about how your experience, with business and with leading businesses, um, and being in that not-for-profit world that you're in at the moment. You look at a lot of the not-for-profit organisations around, because we've got so many in New Zealand. I think more per capita than just about anywhere
It's
else.
like maybe 36,000 not-for-profit
Yeah.
organisations. Yeah.
And in a lot of those spaces, the ones who are leading are the ones who had an idea or were passionate
Mm.
about the thing, or they're just really nice people, or those kind of things, but they don't have the business kind of experience to make some of those hard calls that you've gained from
Mm.
working in your business roles. So what I guess, how does your business background change the way that you lead in those contexts compared to some of those other types of people?
Yeah. And again, it's transferable across all the sectors, right? You don't have to be the brightest guy in the room. That's probably the first thing. Um, a good CEO finds talent. A good CEO finds people that can do the work better than you can in regards to delivering the outcomes, right? A good CEO then looks after them and enables them and clears the way for them to be great. I think what happens if you're intrinsically where the product, I guess, of one of a better word, or the cause in my heart, and that's my focus, it can distract me from running a good business. I employ people that are passionate about it. So take youth development. Am I passionate about it? Yes. Do I want to be a frontline guy that's really in the mud, in the trenches? No. But I will find the right person who is, and I'll pay them well, and I'll look after them, and I'll enable them and give them a culture where they can thrive so they can give
Yeah.
absolutely the best to that young person. That's my job,
Yeah.
is to do that. If I'm in the trenches every 5 minutes, then who's running the organisation? Who's thinking about payroll? Who's thinking about taxes? Who's thinking about our vision? Who's thinking about our strategy, our direction? Who's thinking about how we're going to fund it? Who's thinking about all the other things that make success look great, so
Yeah.
that one person at the front line can do the absolute best job they can?
Yeah. Because if those people on the front line are having to think about taxes and having to think about payroll, they're also getting distracted from what they're good at.
100%. 100%. And it happens a lot. And it's the same with, and I take that methodology when I go into corporate, is I do well in corporate for a couple of reasons. One is, when you're from NGO, you can't help but think it's like your own business. Because if you give me $1, Andy, I have this connection with you that says I must honour that dollar with everything I've got,
Yeah.
because you've personally given that to me. Secondly, I'm not going to do better than that. How do I make that dollar turn into 10? By being smart and strategic. That's a very different attitude, I think, when you're in corporate, when money seems to be there and it's someone else's money. So when I was working at Yellow, I did really well because I had that methodology and that mindset of kind of going, when we transform, this is going to be the greater return. We're going to help the mission of the small business start to think about digital differently. But secondly, the return on investment is going to be much higher, because every dollar we spend, we're going to make sure we spend it in the right space, in the
Yeah.
right place, with the right outcomes. So that's a job of a good leader, I think. Um,
Mm.
and you're right. I think people get over promoted into leadership roles, or they're not leaders, and that's okay. Your skill set, you might be. I mean, your skill set might be you can walk up to anyone on the street and have the most beautiful empathy that makes that person feel seen and heard. My skill set might be that I make 1+1 = 2, so that you get paid to do it.
Yeah.
That's great. One plus, because two of us, we create greatness.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of NGOs, such a blanket statement, isn't it? When you say a lot of NGOs, I think we're all challenged. It's maybe a better way of saying it. Of kind of going, are we running the best business or business structure or business model that allows us to get the best return, whatever that looks like? And if it's lives changed or souls changed or whatever you want to put as your return,
Yeah.
you still got to start with that first premise. And what does
Mm.
great look like to achieve that?
Yeah.
Lots of words, but I think I got it out.
Yeah. No, that's
I
cool.
process as I talk, so it might not be the best for a podcast. We'll see how
Oh
it
no, it's
goes.
great. That's great.
Yeah.
You mentioned the parenting place before, and I think you might
Mm.
be the fourth or fifth guest I've had on who's been through there at some stage.
Well, I was the first CEO. So other than Ian Grant.
Yeah, right.
So Greg Fleming was a general manager. So I just want to put that clear. We often laugh about that. Um, but yeah, I guess I was the first transitional CEO from, I
Yeah,
guess, a founder to CEO model, which was a massive learning curve for me.
yeah, right. And so, like you said, you spent 9 years there, so that was
Mm,
quite a big chunk of
mm.
your passion and your life that you sowed into that. When you think of that time, what are you really proud of?
Number one, the people that we built, the team, um, and that can be a bit of a throwaway comment, in essence, I still have deep connections with everybody in that organisation. I got a message the other day from someone I hired in 2006 or 2007, and she just reached out. So this is what, 15 years
Years
later.
later, yeah,
So I don't
yeah,
want to add it up. Um, and when I hired them, I mean, I thought they were incredible, and I thought they had huge talent, raw talent, and I didn't realise the impact I had on them. I just gave them a good culture to work in, and they came back and just said that it was actually absolutely transformative for their life, and it's come through into their marriage and the way they bring up their children. I mean, what do you do with stuff like that? But I guess for me, it made me reflect that we built a team of super connected people based. It was a beautiful culture,
hmm
and parenting place was I've got to be honest with you, it was a social experiment for me. Okay, it was a master's thesis that never got published.
yeah,
I wanted to prove to myself, and I guess to others watching, and I think I did it, was that I don't know if you've come across this, Andy, but if you work in church or a mission, people go, "We don't talk about business. We're a mission,"
yeah,
you know. And I have fundamentally disagree with that from the get go. Is that the mission can teach a business. So yellow, what's the mission? The mission is, how do I hold the hand of a small business so that he can get digitally connected to help bring in more business, which feeds his family. That sounds like a pretty bloody good mission to me
yeah,
in a business framework. But business coming back is, how do I have the right people and culture pieces around so that I look after my people, that they have a job description, that they get paid well, that, this whole thing of oh, we're a charity, we should get paid less than a business is, there's an element of truth in the sense that you've got different levers and income coming in, but it doesn't have to be so far apart that you're starving and you can't afford to feed your family, but you're out there saving kids. I mean, that's just rubbish
yeah,
in my view. So I wanted to prove at the parenting place that we could have a business mindset and a business framework, but with a very strong mission output. So, for example, I had a fundraiser there who was paid $35,000. She was bringing in close to $1 million. She was bringing in almost $1 million a year. That doesn't make sense.
yeah,
So I went to market and said, what would a fundraiser like that be worth? And at the time, it was $85,000. So I said, right. So how do we get out of there? And I think what happens, mate, is that an NGO especially, we go, oh, we can't afford to do it. And I go, that's the wrong question. The question is, what's the size of the problem? How big's the hole? And how do we fill it?
yeah,
Yeah. And so that's what I did. And, I made some mistakes, and I'm sure there's some few stories out there, but the biggest mistake I made is I probably moved too fast sometimes, didn't bring people on the journey. But I surrounded myself with super talent. And I remember one of my board guys, a guy called Sir John Graham, was on our board, had a very
mm,
powerful board. He said to me, Bruce, you never have to stand on a soapbox to tell people how great you are. The team you create will naturally reflect on you. I thought, wow, that's a great comment.
yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, so that's probably what I'm proudest of. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope you got 4 hours for this podcast, mate.
No, no, we're all good. So you're currently leading the Spirit of Adventure Trust.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what the organisation is
Mm.
and what your role is there?
So CEO,
Yep.
they hunted me down, so I felt very honoured to take the role in the end. I didn't really want the role at first. I'd left Yellow, and Mand and I were going to take a year off to travel the world, and COVID came and etc. But they kept persisting and pursuing, I guess. I mean, I did everything I did. I turned up in journals and a t-shirt for interviews. I was provocative, and but it kept, I guess everything aligned, and it became the right role for this time. The Spirit of Venture Trust is 50 years old, and the core of it, what it does is youth development. But it's probably the best, in my view, from what I've seen in my worldview. It's one of the best youth development programs, if not the best I've ever seen. And the primary reason for that is we have this audience captured for 10 days, 24 hours, at sea. So 40 young people come on board. They have no devices. They don't know each other. They get put into bunks. They come from all sorts of different, culture and diversity and thinking and religion, and they get put into this melting pot, and they can't hide behind cell phones or avatars. They actually just have to become a community. And it's a tight community. I mean, you're bunking within inches of each other. Smells, bells, you name it, it's all there. And what happens is that you sail a tall ship, which is a challenge in itself, but everything's a challenge. Getting up at 6:30 in the morning for a swim, prepping food, climbing the mast, setting sails, getting off the ship, going ashore, climbing, getting on with people. And what happens is that about day 6, they get feral, almost like Lord of the Flies. And then day 7, they click and become a community. And day 9, we hand the ship over and they run it.
Wow.
Everything from engineering right through to cooking meals for 53 people, the whole thing. And the confidence and the resilience and the self-worth and all those things and the community and the relationships that are deep walk off after 10 days. And we do that 26 times a year. Actually, more than that, 30 times a year.
Wow.
So 1,200 kids. And go for a walk now. Go for a walk down the main street of Christchurch, wherever that is now, and say Spirit of Adventure, and you'll find within seconds someone who knows someone whose life's been changed or they've been changed personally.
Yeah.
So if I take a step back, so what's the power? The power is the ocean. Te Moana. The power is it's very spiritual out there. The power is tangaroa. The power is all those things that happen out there. Nature, universe, God, whatever you want to call it for you, happens when you're out. And the same thing happens if you go for a tramp or whatever. And it just is transformative.
Yeah.
So, 50 years this year.
Cool.
As of December, yeah.
And like you say, you're not the frontline person. You're the one kind of overseeing things and whatever. But
Yeah.
do you go and spend time on the boats?
Yeah, I have. I've been out the ship in my first 3 weeks. I went out and did a 10-day voyage. I went out as the most junior person on the ship, almost what's that, undercover boss type thing?
Yeah.
Almost a bit like that. And I dealt frontline with the young people, and it was life changing for me. I mean, I knew nothing. I was standing there, and because what happens is that 40 young people come on board, they get split into 4 shifts of 10, and then they get what they call a watch assistant over that shift. So I was a watch assistant. So I'm standing at a sales station, and they're looking at me going, so what do we do? And I'm like, I don't know. We pull a rope, I guess. But we're learning together. I had this beautiful time, actually. I was climbing the mast in a storm, which was scary. It was pouring down rain, and I hate heights, and I was really scared. And I'm climbing the mast, and I'm not comfortable. And I felt a hand on my shoulder, and I turned around. It was one of the young guys, one of the young people that came on board. I won't say his name. He was 16 years old, and he goes, "You've got this, Bruce. You can do this."
That's so cool.
Sorry, it makes me feel a bit emotional. But isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
That you create a situation where a 55-year-old cisgendered white male from North Shore who's absolutely petrified gets encouraged by a young guy who I don't know in a most vulnerable time in my life, climbing something that I don't like doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's anything that creates an environment like that is fucking cool. Sorry, I can't think of another word.
Yeah.
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 So I'm imagining that you, like, given that that's kind of the way that you guys do it, hearing talks of like boot camps and things like that probably doesn't float your boat.
No, no. I think one of the things I'm really struggling with, Andy, and I'd love to know your opinion, is I think youth are being politicised at the moment.
Mm.
I think youth in New Zealand, young people in New Zealand, rangatahi, are phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think they've been in a season where they've been locked down, held back, missed out on a whole bunch of firsts in their lives, and they've got blinkers on, and they're lost in the world of social media and hiding and hiding. And if we can find anything to just help them lift up
Mm.
and see forward, you see greatness. In fact, way beyond us.
Yeah.
And the issues they care about are deep. Culture, diversity, environment, inclusion. They're deep, deep issues. And if you give them a bit of space to run in that area, they will frickin' transform us. And boot camps, and what we're doing is we're focusing on the 200 kids that are in New Zealand that are ram raiding, and I feel for them, and we need to do a lot of work around them. But it is not. It, it is a situation that needs work. It is not reflective of youth,
Yeah.
in my opinion. And boot camps where you bring kids in and point at them and yell at them, they need to be seen, and you need to create a situation where they feel seen. You know,
A kid that's getting yelled at isn't going to put his hand on your shoulder and say, "You've got this, Bruce."
no. I remember speaking to this young boy on the ship. It was just recently, actually, and he was scared of water, and so he's wearing basically a life preserver around everywhere. Young Māori boy, and so I got the privilege to sit down with him and go, and he's full immersion te reo, so first language. And I remember saying to him, "How do you feel the fact that your people are from the water and from the navigation and all that, and you're scared of water?" And he was really struggling with it.
Mm.
And it was such a privileged conversation. Anyway, every morning we go for a swim at 6:30, and he would go in the water with his life preserver on. And I actually gave the Brené Brown quote one morning: "Comfort or courage. You can either choose comfort or courage. We can't have both." And he walked up to me and goes, "You know what, Bruce? I'm sick of choosing comfort." 2 days later, he was doing manus off the bowsprit
Awesome.
without a life preserver.
Awesome.
All right. 3 days later, he was swimming around the ship, confident. But the story goes further. I was speaking to his principal at Te Kora, and she was saying to me that he had to go into a speech contest, and he hated public speaking. That was the first part. Second part, he had to do it in English, so he was really uncomfortable. Like speaking in te reo would have been much easier for him. And as he walked up on stage, he said to the principal, "You know what?" He used a word that started with F, but you can make that up. Something comfort. He said, "I'm
Yeah.
not. I'm going to choose courage." And he walked up and he won the competition.
Well,
Nothing else to say, really, is there?
no.
Mic
Yeah.
drop.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that for me, that just goes back to how do we love people?
Absolutely.
And I mean, we're talking about these ram raids and things. The wrong question. And I think Aaron Hendry, who's been on the podcast, he writes really well about this. That he said the question is not how do we stop them doing this. The question is what is going on in their life.
100%.
And because this is an outworking of something that's going on in their life, and it's actually showing that our systems aren't working. It's not the problem; it's the manifestation of the problem. And yet, what you did with that guy was sit down and find out, okay, well, what's underneath all this, and allow him to process that and journey through that, and yeah,
Yeah, I think people don't join gangs because they want to take up violence. I think they join gangs for connection.
yeah,
Humans want to be seen and loved and connected, whatever that looks like for you. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of these young people are not having that experience, and of being seen, loved, and having that deep connection with someone who genuinely loves them. Yeah, I'm a massive believer, Andy, in a community up strategy rather than a government down strategy.
yeah,
I believe that if we can empower young people at a community level, And empower is such a loaded word, isn't it? But if we can see young people and enable them to be seen and enable them to be an ally to them, I guess is probably the better word.
Mm.
So not that I'm walking and saying this is what you need to do to be right. I'm coming alongside you, and how can I be an ally to you towards you realizing your absolute potential? And we do that at a community level. Then I think we can see change.
Yeah.
I think we're very easy at going, government needs to provide a boot camp. What's the government going to do? Need more money from the government, blah, 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 blah. And yes, they in themselves are solutions, but it's not holistic enough for me. And I think
Yeah.
all these, there's some very, very good youth organisations. I mean, I think of Zeal, for example,
Yeah.
and other organisations like that that are doing some tremendous work at a ground level. Zeal is a great example. They just simply create a place where a young person can come in and be,
Yeah.
you know, um, and that might be just coming in for them and just sitting still and just not having any noise in their life, or picking up a paintbrush for the first time and creating something. Or I think more we develop that, I think we'll start to see effective change in young people. So yeah, no, I'm not a boot camp man at all. They can take those and all that noise, and they can put that over there,
Yeah.
whoever they are.
Yeah. 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 And I think you're right though. Like a lot of that is using our rangatahi as political footballs, isn't it?
I agree.
Just just to try and win a few votes by driving fear,
Yep.
all that
Yep.
kind of stuff, rather than going, how do we actually love people?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about what you're doing now. And of course, I mean, you've been involved in that in a whole range of different ways through your career. So it's really cool to hear some snippets of that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that the parenting place used to do is that, I guess the pointy finger one is, don't have sex. Right, in schools, I'm talking about, or sexual disease, and we scare people. You could get STIs and all this
Yeah.
stuff. Where the parenting place came in and said, "Okay, your body, you have a choice.
Mm.
What does great look like for you?
Yeah.
What is so? It's a completely different way of looking at it, and it's given the young person the power to make a decision based on what's best for them, rather than us telling them. I mean, you've got kids; it doesn't work.
No.
You can't. If a person can't discover who they are and how they can start to navigate life on their own, with us being an ally to them, then they're going to get lost as soon as they're out on their own. You know, yeah. I love the word ally. I think it's such a neat word because you're not taking over. You're walking the journey with them side by side. I love that sort of description. I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it means that as your journey shows, that you can take whatever skills and passions and things that you have
Mm,
and use it in a way that works for you to be able to do that.
mm,
And I mean, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because, you do get the sense that there's some people who think, oh, to do good in the world, I have to, stop doing what I love doing. Like if they're really good at making money or something
mm.
in a business, going, well, I have to give that up to go and work for this thing and be on the front lines. It's like, no,
No,
no, you don't have
no,
to do that. In fact,
no.
those organizations are crying out for people who can make money.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
like, yeah, someone who's great at fundraising is gold for those organizations.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a journey I've walked on myself, of getting myself on the front lines, doing some social kind of stuff, and realizing actually this is driving me into anxiety and depression because
Mm.
this is not my skill set, and yet I 100% believe in this organization,
Yes.
and so yeah, how can we be allies? How can
Yeah.
and it might mean we work for someone, it might mean we just have a conversation with someone, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did you ever remember? Because you're in your 40s, sometimes do you ever remember sitting in church at times and someone from the mission field comes in, and they go, and you almost walked out thinking, oh, if I'm not on the mission field, then I'm not really doing
yeah,
any good.
yeah,
Um, and that's probably more on me as much as that person. I don't think that person's intention was to say that. But and I think in some ways we fell in love with the sense of adventure that they're
yeah,
out there doing an adventure. But I guess for me it's kind of going, as soon as you walk out, well, actually not even when we walk out of the house, as soon as you wake up in the morning, your mission starts. It starts with the way you treat your wife or your partner. I talk wife because I've got a wife, but if your partner, however that is for you, It starts with the way you treat your children. It starts with the way you treat your pets. So it starts with the way when you walk downstairs and say hello to the neighbour, even the one you don't like. Which Amanda has much better empathy for people like that than I do, to be honest. But Amanda said to me something the other day. We were walking down the street. I used to feel bad because if someone came up that I felt uncomfortable around, or I didn't understand them, or I go quiet and I just don't know what to do, and I don't really want to engage. And I was thinking, what an arsehole am I? Yet, man, my beautiful wife Amanda just engages beautifully with them and makes them feel. And she said to me the other day, she goes, "That's just my strength. That's what I do, and I do it well. What you do well." And I think there's a little bit of that too. Is that it's okay, like you just said, Andy. Is that you know your strength may not be the frontline person because of the anxiety or the things that it can cause effect to you, but you supporting the person that does it, taking them out for coffee, flicking the encouraging text, "I'm here for you, bro." There's a massive power in that.
Mm.
And there might be a step behind that. You might go, "I'll make sure that your payroll goes in every Tuesday when you expect it, and I'm not going to stuff that up." Or it can go a step. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
We all have a part to play, and if we do our part well, then we're contributing to the mission.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think that's a beautiful way to sum up our conversation today. So, yeah, thank you for taking time to talk.
Pleasure.
Thank you for sharing around some of that hard stuff, the vulnerability, the discomfort, because I think that's something that we're not good at as a culture, and
No,
yet
we're not.
is actually some of the most valuable, life-changing times is when you can get into those spaces. So, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for just sharing a little bit of your heart and your passions, and thank you for what you're doing to bring a bit of heaven down to earth.
Yeah, thanks, man. And well, hopefully there's some gold in there for you. But I'm on a journey, and I'm still learning. But I'm very proud of the people I've come in contact with and worked with. So it's nice to share a bit of their story too.
Hello, hello, heaven. Will I hear you whisper to come near?
I came away from this corridor so inspired. Bruce's concern for people in the midst of really uncomfortable change goes a long way to counteract that narrative that CEOs making changes are heartless. It was great to hear about that space of discomfort and vulnerability that we often do really poorly, and to be challenged to embrace those things while loving those involved. So, Bruce, thank you for who you are and for what you do. Here is a blessing for you. Bruce, may you and Amanda continue to thrive in your relationship, complementing one another as you share who you are with each other. May you enjoy this time of life with adult children and all the joys that stage of parenting brings. As you continue to walk the path of courage, may the discomfort you choose lead to flourishing for you and those whom you serve. May you continue to hear stories from those whom you've led in the past to encourage you in your future as they share the difference that working with you has made to them. But may you know that your influence goes well beyond the stories that come back to you. In your current role, may you see lives changed and futures shaped, not because you are there on deck, but because you are running the organisation in a way that allows those on board to be great. When things get tough, when others aren't seeing the vision or are resisting the changes that you're trying to make, when you wonder to yourself if you're doing the right thing, or in those times of fear and challenge, may you feel a hand on your shoulder and hear those beautiful words of encouragement. You've got this, Bruce. May you always have the spirit of adventure inside you, that desire to see things change and grow and flourish and to see people thrive in the midst of it all. And may you continue to walk that path with love. Lastly, may you know you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved. Thanks to Strawn for the music and Rangi for the karakia. Join me next time when I talk to founder of the Kindness Collective Foundation, Sarah Page. We talk all things kindness and how loving and serving others is good for your own well-being. We hear the remarkable story of small acts of kindness that have led to a thriving charity with huge impact in Aotearoa. Until then, me inoi tātou.
E tō mātou matua I te rangi, kia tapu tō ingoa, kia tau mai tō rangatiratanga, kia mea te tau e pai ai ki runga ki te whenua, kia rite anō ki tō te rangi. Humai kia mātou ai nei, he taro mā mātou mō tēnei rā. Muro o mātou hara, me mātou hoki e muru nei I o te hunga, e hara ana kia mātou. Aua hoki mātou e kawea, kia whakawaia, engari whakaorangi a mātou I te kino.